Peter, I've heard you describe derivatives this way. It's like a real estate agent selling a house. But the buyer, all the buyer knows is what he paid for the house. All the seller knows is what he received for the house. And then the agent gets to pocket the difference, whatever the fee is that he wants to make up, doesn't have to disclose it. As a matter of fact, the real estate agent wouldn't even have to disclose or make available what the prices were on the same block for houses that sold. The derivative program is an absolute, utter scam that should be investigated by the Justice Department. I tell you, as I look at this, it's infuriating to know that this is going unchecked. Set it up for us. What happens on the third Wednesday of every month where it comes to derivative decisions?
I mean, you've got a market that's controlled by just a few select players, and they are going to guard this to the end. This is their cash cow. It's their club. They're not letting anybody else in. But you got to start with an extremely complex, esoteric product that even more sophisticated investors, institutions, they don't understand it. And these products are being sold, and just as you just described, that middle piece is guarded by these banks and taken as a profit. So what's going on is the exchanges, the clearing houses, all of the different pieces up and down the integration ladder are being controlled by these banks.
Well, so what you have is, I mean, look, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, these huge, powerful bankers put together this invisible powerful committee that won't, first of all, they won't disclose who's on the committee. They won't disclose where they meet. They won't disclose the details of what they talk about. They won't disclose anything that leads transparency to take place. And we have a Justice Department that at this point has been saying for months they're going to investigate this. But the truth is the banks in this group, this affiliation, are dealing with this thing called the derivative that most people don't even understand. They don't understand, certainly, that these bankers are stealing from them. I mean, that's the best way to put it. That these bankers are stealing from them by making this process invisible.
The transparency is key. You cannot have market-driven prices if buyers and sellers on both sides don't understand where the prices are coming from. And they are safeguarding this and not letting other players in, and they are going to great lengths. And interestingly enough, in addition to these meetings that you're talking about that we're seeing in the press, here's what's really important. What they're doing, these players, J.P. Morgan, for instance, Goldman Sachs just hired a gentleman by the name of Theo Lubke. He was in charge of the New York Fed Reform Derivatives Unit. He was in charge of cleaning all this up for the Reform Fed. Goldman Sachs hired him, and now he's in charge of their Client Regulatory Reform Office, who is responsible for navigating the impending overhaul of the financial regulation. So it's called agency recapture, where they're going to hire the regulators, bringing them in-house, and are helping water down and take away the reforms that were in the Dodd-Frank Act. And so they're meaningless.
Okay, well, let's first of all, let's say the obvious. Derivatives, CDOs, synthetics, swaps, all of this toxic trash is what has this economy in a damn near depression.
I mean there are good reasons to use the derivatives can be used to hedge, but you're talking about, like, let's take the CDOs you just mentioned. CDOs were actually used, and there's a company by the name of Market that is controlled by the big banks, and they created indexes or indices that track CDOs and subprime through collateralized debt obligations and the credit default swaps. They're using these to track the subprime market and bet big and win big on the subprime market. They're packaging them up and selling them to mom-and-pop investors, pension funds, and not disclosing what's in them, how much they made.
And they're counting that they're going to fail. From the other side, they're counting on the fact that they're going to fail. So, Peter, you have a variety of industry groups that big banks influence the rules. They govern derivatives. They set the standards, and now what's becoming more obvious is not only do they do it in secret, they're doing everything they can to protect the secrecy of how they set prices. Even who is the person setting the prices? Where do they come from? Do they come from Goldman Sachs, one of the banks that we had to bail out, or J.P. Morgan that we had to lend billions of dollars to because they couldn't manage their own business? Now they're managing in secret the entire derivative market. So you have clearinghouses. Let's talk about the ICE clearinghouse. What is the ICE clearinghouse?
ICE clearinghouse is one of about three. There's the ICE, there's CME, and there's NASDAQ. That the Dodd-Frank Act is mandating that the clearinghouses provide a mechanism for trades for the banks, and they're carving out a lot of the trades, which is the big issue. Which ones have to go through these clearinghouses? But what the clearinghouses will require is that there be a margin or collateral for those that play in this market. You've got to have the collateral to be able to take these risks.
But we don't know. We don't know whether they do or not now. I mean, because we don't even know who the hell's at the table, right?
Well, and who's controlling the ICE is the issue. Guess who's the controlling members of the ICE? The exchanges, the banks.
The very people we bailed out because they were so frigging incompetent that they went bankrupt. I mean, those are the people. Those are the people now that are in charge. Look, let me just tell you something. Here's the simple analysis. When you go and investor trades stock, investor trades whether it's Coca-Cola or whatever it is, they trade stock. Any other company, we know the price. We know the commission. We know what people are being paid. We know what similar trades are. Electronic trading has made this information available to anybody who wants it. So it increases competition, it lowers costs, and it works from a standpoint of making something that's sustainable and transparent. This, everything I just described, the derivative market that's being led by Chase, by Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan, the people who are doing this in secret are doing just the opposite of everything that the free market should be doing. Do you agree with that, or is that an overstatement?
No, I don't think that's, especially in some of the more CDO-type mortgage-backed driven products, which is what we saw blow this up in the last 2 years. For instance, a security. Well, you mentioned earlier, regular old traded security. There are industry rules about markup and markdown, no more than 5%, depending on the specific product. There's nothing in place. So the lack of oversight, there's no regulators looking over anybody's shoulders. This is pretty much like swaps, pretty much an unregulated market the size of the Grand Canyon. I mean, you're talking trillions of dollars, unregulated, traded. Nobody can see. It's the Wizard of Oz. Nobody can pull back the curtain. Nobody knows what they're looking at, and it's a huge market.
Okay, so look, suffice it to say, the way I've looked at this as I've read about it, there's no business on the globe that's as profitable today as derivatives. You can make loans, it's not as profitable. Credit cards aren't. Mergers aren't. Managing wealth's not. This is the most profitable business on the frigging globe right now. Now, when this was put together, why is it that the Dodd-Frank bill didn't say, hell, you have to have some transparency here? I mean, what? This is like giving the key to the bank to a bunch of thieves who've already proved that they're thieves. We already know they're thieves. We already saw what they did to the meltdown, the economic meltdown last year, the year before that. They are thieves. They're crooks. Most of them should be in frigging jail. And nevertheless, Dodd-Frank bill didn't have anything in there about transparency or competitiveness.